Hello and welcome. The aim of this video is to make you more aware of your inner mechanics so that you can learn to treat your inner life in a more conscious manner, thereby engaging in less reactive, mechanical, dysfunctional behavior, which is something more or less all of us do on a daily basis, which is something we discover when we observe ourselves, our thoughts, emotions, words, and actions consciously. This understanding of the centers and their wrong work is not intended to create a sense of burden or guilt. It is not about perfecting yourself overnight or adding another layer of pressure to your life. Life in the so-called hustle and bustle of the modern world can be difficult enough to navigate anyway, and this knowledge should rather lighten your load than make it heavier. So instead, this can be looked upon as an invitation to gently hold this awareness in the background as you navigate your experiences. By observing yourself with curiosity rather than judgment, you create space for growth. As already alluded to, mistakes and misalignments are part of being human, and the human condition entails a lot of faulty programming. Thus, the goal is, first and foremost, to bring more consciousness into your actions and choices. This will gradually align you with your natural balance and foster harmony within and around you. Ultimately, allowing each center to do its proper work means a gradual adjustment and surrender to the natural flow of life. The concept of the four centers and their wrong work is an integral part of the Fourth Way teachings, a system of thought developed by Gurdjieff and expanded and expounded upon by his students, such as, for example, Ouspensky and Maurice Nicole. These teachings focus on achieving self-awareness and inner harmony in a way that works for a person living and partaking in society, and it takes a holistic approach to the human experience, developing both the emotional and intellectual as well as the physical side of the individual. Thus, working with the centers focuses on understanding their distinct functions: intellectual, emotional, moving, and instinctive. Each center has a specialized role in our inner life. The intellectual center processes thoughts and reasoning. The emotional center governs exactly what it sounds like, and all within and without that relate to our emotional life. The moving center controls learned physical actions, and the instinctive center manages essential bodily functions such as digestion and breathing. Wrong work arises when these centers fail to function as intended, either because one center is overburdened or because another takes over a task for which it is ill-suited. This misalignment often leads to inefficiency, inner conflict, and unnecessary suffering. It's important for us to understand how one center takes over the tasks of another center thoroughly and apply it to our own experiences. Otherwise, these teachings will just be empty words. The experiencer, experiencing the work of the center with conscious, intentional awareness, has to be present for real understanding to occur. As with so much knowledge, especially knowledge that pertains to our inner lives, the map is not the territory, and this should be seen as a helpful model of our inner workings, rather than an exhaustive explanation. The intellectual center thrives on logic and analysis. It is meant to process and store knowledge, compare, solve problems, and plan effectively. The key is to use this center for tasks that truly require analysis and to allow other centers to perform their respective roles. In our modern world, with its focus on the intellect is most often the center that takes over the work of the other centers. This can lead to a loss of connection with one's emotional life and with other people, and an inability to engage fully with life. The intellectual center can, for example, intellectualize issues that need to be processed emotionally, which can lead both to a lack of understanding and empathy, as well as suppressed emotions. Wrong work also occurs when this center becomes preoccupied with trivialities or is overwhelmed by obsessive thinking. For example, overanalyzing an interaction to the point of creating anxiety demonstrates a misuse of the intellectual center. We're going to use an extreme example that still is within the realm of possible human behaviors to illustrate how the intellectual center can take over what is appropriate for the emotional center, so you can really see how this might play out. Imagine that a friend shares a painful story about losing a loved one, hoping for comfort. Instead of engaging emotionally, you analyze the situation. Statistically, people in their 80s often pass from heart disease, so this was likely inevitable. At least their suffering is over. Your friend, seeking empathy, feels dismissed and hurt. Meanwhile, you bury any discomfort their grief stirs within you, telling yourself, "This isn't my problem." Later, the weight of unacknowledged feelings manifests as unease or irritability, though you can't pinpoint why. By over-intellectualizing, you fail to connect emotionally, leaving both you and your friend unsatisfied and unresolved. The emotional center governs feelings and responses to experiences. It operates best when attuned to genuine emotional states. Wrong work arises when it functions mechanically or reacts disproportionately to stimuli. A typical example is being habitually angered by minor frustrations. Such patterns suggest that the emotional center is operating on automatic responses rather than genuine feelings. Another form of wrong work occurs when emotions try to manage intellectual tasks, such as attempting to solve a logical problem based on intuition rather than analysis. This misalignment can lead to distorted perspectives, such as projecting personal insecurities onto neutral situations, creating unnecessary misunderstandings. When emotions override reasoning, such as making decisions based purely on fear, anger, or hurt feelings without examining the facts, the intellectual center is displaced. Or, at the opposite end, you can make decisions based on a strong desire for something and completely ignore all the dangers and problems that are staring you right in the face. This is also wrong work of the emotional center. To use another extreme example, imagine that you notice a beautiful, expensive car and feel a strong desire to own it. Instead of considering whether it fits your needs or budget, the emotional center takes over, convincing you that owning it will bring happiness and status. Ignoring reason, you take out a hefty loan, thinking the car will transform your life. Once the initial excitement fades, reality sets in. The monthly payments strain your finances, and the anticipated joy never materializes. The emotional center, fueled by unchecked desire, overstepped its role, driving impulsive actions. Reflecting later, you recognize that the desire clouded your ability to make balanced decisions. The car in the example can, of course, be replaced by any item that is bought in the same manner, and you may need to observe your own spending to see similar wrong work in your own life. The moving center is responsible for physical actions that have been learned and refined over time, such as walking, typing, or playing an instrument. When it functions properly, it automates repetitive tasks and allows the intellectual center to focus on more complex issues. Wrong work in this center often manifests as restless or inefficient movements caused by misplaced nervous energy or emotional tension. For instance, fidgeting during a meeting or struggling to focus on a physical task are signs of misaligned use of the moving center. Neglecting to train this center to refine physical skills also leads to inefficiency. Proper attention and practice can restore its effectiveness. An example of severe wrong work of the moving center is when an addiction or addictive habit has become so hardwired that the behavior happens automatically, with no cognitive processing involved. A lighter version of this is the mindless scrolling on social media feeds that are so common today. An interesting example of how the intellectual center takes over the functions of the moving center is when we try to think up what needs to be handled reflexively by the moving center. This leads to slow, clumsy movements, which also is something that illustrates how these centers operate at very different speeds. Driving a car is a good example of this. To operate the vehicle effectively, the movements need to happen automatically, and when you have to think of every movement, the driving becomes overwhelming and you become anxious. The instinctive center handles the body's vital functions and automatic responses, such as breathing and digestion. It works best without conscious interference. Wrong work occurs when external habits or internal conflicts disrupt its natural rhythms. Poor dietary habits can confuse the instinctive center's regulation of hunger and satiety, leading to overeating or malnutrition. Stress can similarly interfere with instinctive processes like sleep. Attempting to consciously control these functions, for instance, obsessively monitoring one's breathing, can create unnecessary complications. The instinctive center is most effective when trusted to perform its automatic roles without interference. However, as just stated, in our modern society, many of the instinctive center's functions have been misplaced by an unnatural lifestyle. This includes the breath, as our emotional mismanagement often spills over to the instinctive center. When we spend a significant part of our waking life in fight or flight mode, without any natural release of the emotions, it doesn't just cause physical tension through the emotional energy that is stored inside the body. It can also lead to shallow chest breathing and mouth breathing. We have a whole video on proper breathing, and there will be a link to it at the end screen. Breathing is also a special area, as it's somewhere between the moving and instinctual center. It's also interesting to note that breathing, in many religions and spiritual traditions, is connected with the life force, called by various names, such as ki, prana, or pneuma. Understanding and addressing the wrong work of the four centers is critical for creating harmony and effectiveness in life. Through self-observation, you can identify when a center is misaligned or taking on tasks it is ill-suited to perform. For example, noticing patterns of overthinking in the intellectual center can help you shift focus back to the present moment. Observing repetitive emotional reactions enables you to regulate feelings more intentionally. Paying attention to physical habits and developing practices like yoga or mindfulness can help ground the moving center. Similarly, fostering healthier bodily rhythms and trusting the instinctive center to function automatically can bring greater balance to your life. We have a whole video on self-observation if you want to check it out. There will be a link to it at the end screen. In summary, the wrong work of the four centers highlights the ways in which human faculties often operate in conflict rather than harmony. Each center has its strengths and specific purposes, and recognizing their proper roles is essential for creating a balanced inner life. Awareness and intentionality are key to correcting these imbalances. By observing how your centers function and making small adjustments, you can restore alignment and improve both your inner state and your external actions. Through this process, you move toward a more integrated and harmonious way of living. Finally, you are reminded that this is about assuming a more conscious approach to your thoughts, emotions, words, and actions. In other words, to your inner and outer life, as it is happening in the present moment. It's not about obsessing over whether your centers are working as they should or not. It's about helping a natural process along, and this natural process is not about rigidity, struggle, or control. There is a reason why self-observation is the cornerstone of the Fourth Way tradition. By simply bringing more conscious awareness into the present moment, observing whatever is going on, while staying as free of judgment towards what you discover as possible, you start shifting that which you observe. There is great power in conscious, intentional observation, and if you are really observant, you will notice that inner change is for the most part an unconscious process. Just like with so many things in life, you may have a picture of where you want to be, but then you need to take a step back. Be present with whatever is going on. Observe with detachment and make small, deliberate course corrections without struggling against life when you notice that you have fallen out of alignment, and you need to do this without punishing yourself for what is an inevitable part of being human. You've now reached the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for your time.